Hello and welcome back to Bricks Banner, the show with real talk from the custom LEGO community. I'm your host as always, Billy, and before we jump in, let me just remind you that on our Instagram page, there is a post with the photos related to what was discussed today, so if you're lost on what we were talking about, feel free to pause and check it out there. The Instagram page is bricks_and_banter. Now then, with that out of the way, it's time to introduce this week's guest. He's the founder and creative force behind one of the community's most beloved brands. He's constantly seeking new ways to push the custom minifigure market forward, and he is a collector himself. That's right, today we are talking with Adam from PhoenixCustomBricks. We discuss what it's like working with other brands and collaborations, how he decides if a design gets produced or not, difficulties of designing a minifigure, and so much more. So, with no further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Adam from PhoenixCustomBricks.
Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, by piece, coming live piece by piece.
And we're here with Adam from Phoenix Customs. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing, Billy?
I'm doing great. It's a real honor to have you on. You've been a well-requested guest by many, even Will recently. So, yeah, no, this feels like a long time coming, quite honestly.
No, thanks for having me on. I'm a huge fan. I actually just got hooked onto your podcast recently, so this is an honor on my side. So,
well, it's kind of you to say. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation because it's very much out of my element in terms of the pop culture scene. Like, I've been a longtime observer of your stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I've seen some of it in person. I actually saw it because of Victor owned a few of your old customs like Gambit and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away by the quality on those. And so, yeah,
Thanks,
long
man.
time observer of it, but not so involved in the work that I know the nitty gritty of what you've had going on. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, sure. Me too. And I'm like I said, I'm a huge fan of Legos in general. So it'll just be fun talking about it with you too, since you have kind of a niche that I'm kind of unfamiliar with as well, like the modding and all that kind of stuff, which is hugely impressive. I'm always, whenever I see people that can do that, I'm just like, that's a whole nother world I could never touch. My hands are too big and clumsy to do anything as cool as that. So I'm always impressed with you guys as well. So this will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure, like, you've seen some of the episodes. I always start at the beginning, so I just want to know what got you motivated to get into this. And I know I'm sure you were an A-full before, so let's just, how'd this all start?
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it all starts obviously. I was an AFL, but before that, I guess you could say I was an out of touch kind of got in the, what do they call that, the black hole where you kind of get out of Lego after teenage
The
years.
dark ages.
The
Yeah.
dark ages. There you go. So I was in the dark ages. And then I had I got married, had some kids, and my oldest was, I gotta say, maybe about 6 or so. And she wanted to walk through the Lego aisle, which I hadn't done in a while. You know, always kind of peek at it as an adult, but you don't really walk down it as much unless the kids do. So we were walking down it, and I remember looking over and seeing this Darth Vader figure. And I kept thinking, like, oh my God, two things I love, Lego and Star Wars all in one thing, and it looks beautiful. I have to have this. And I was kind of giving my daughter, like, oh, doesn't that look cool, to try to get her to want to get it or something. Which she didn't, which disappointed me. And I couldn't get it out of my head for like a week. And I was like, you know what? I just got to get that thing. So I found it, got one. And then she was interested in Lego and liked seeing it. And so we got a couple sets for her that she was interested in. We start building. And before long, she got the bug, and I was interested in helping her build and play with it. And you know how the adults like us on our age, parent side, get into it. And then before long, it's kind of weird. She just came up to me one day and said, "Dad, is there any way you could make me a Lego?" And I thought, you know what? I'm sure there is. I could figure this out. I'm the kind of guy that likes to dive in, figure stuff out, and do something new. You know, if it's interesting, engaging, and this was. And my dad he's a designer at heart, and so I kind of have. And I used to dabble in art a little bit, but not. I didn't really get into design much, which a lot of people are always shocked when I say I'm not a designer. They always think, how is that possible that you can make this stuff? But I just dove into it. And so I looked into how to make her a figure. I know there's probably a way you can customize these. It couldn't be too hard, but it is a lot harder than I thought. And so I dove in and I found this place called Eurobricks, which is this internet forum where they have all these different forums for Lego themes and topics. And there was one on customization, and I just dove headfirst in that. And before long, I noticed that they had a nice feedback system of where people could post things and questions, and people would get back that had more information and experience. And before long, I started learning about how to design things, and that there's decaling. And so that my first instance of customization was actually decaling, which thank God I don't do it anymore. It's so tough. I don't know how you guys do that with
No, don't ask me. I I just dipped my toe into decaling a few items, and I'll never do it again unless
it's so hard,
necessary.
right? Yeah, it's so hard. I like I said, with my clumsy big fingers, and I can't do this little detailing, but I tried. I got into doing decals. I designed stuff and I put it on the Legos, and I started learning what works and what doesn't, and how you can make the finish better, and how touchy those decals can be. And it was just frustrating. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then I ran into, like I was saying before, jokingly, our gateway drug, Will, at Brick Arms, who noticed all of my stuff on the Eurobricks that I was posting. And I was getting a lot of feedback, good feedback. So I was getting confident in, that I was making something that was kind of decent. And he started saying, you know what, you should do some stuff for me. And then I did some stuff for him. And before long, I just dove into this custom stuff, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. And before you knew it, I was hooked, I had to learn, how to make these, how to make printed ones. So we dabbled with his printers. He did some prints of some of the figs I designed for him. I guess the way I looked at it was, this could be something I could do. And then all of a sudden I remember a conversation I had. I was in the middle of doing my dissertation at the time for education, which was hugely time consuming. But I just had this weekend urge every so often to do design. And he was like, you know what? I think you should do your own custom business. And I thought about it, and I just dove in. And next thing you know, I'm making figures, and the rest is history.
Wow. And now, so those times on Eurobricks when Will discovered you and you were just starting to get into it, that was around like 2013, 2014?
Yeah, so funny, as I'm listening to your podcast, I realize all these people remember the dates of stuff and things. So I had to
No,
actually look
no,
back.
no, no.
I had no clue. I was like, I don't remember any of this stuff like when I started. So I did look. So on Eurobricks, I think it was about 2012
Wow,
that I got
okay.
into that. So that was when I first started and sharing designs. And I I started the business. I look back on October 2013. So about a year and a half after I got going.
Yeah, that was the date I saw looking back on your Flickr.
Yeah. And that was kind of interesting going back in Flickr. I haven't been back there in a long time, so that was kind of fun to go back on that.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was about the time that I started, was 2013.
Now, that connection with Will is very interesting. I didn't know of that. So, were those figures that he was initially releasing with his printer, um,
Yes.
those were your designs?
Yeah, so well, let's see. I'm not sure. He might have had some figures before mine. I just remember he said he needed some US soldiers, some German soldiers. And so I designed a couple of those, and I had to look up to see what they're called, because every so often I'll get somebody that's like, "What? You made some figures as well?" And then yeah, so one of them was, I'm gonna have to pull this up again. It was I made 3 US figures for him. One was like a basic soldier, like a corporal or something like that, and then another was a sergeant, and then another was like an officer. And then I made a couple of German soldiers with a whole bunch of different parts you could add in and subtract. And he did that with his digital printer, his UV digital printer, which ended up looking great. And then I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if he used those to improve on them or not. But yeah, those were back then. He might have had some before that. I want to say he did, but I can't remember if it was him or if he just used somebody else's to go along with his
Gotcha.
weaponry and stuff. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. There's one, a World War II German soldier, Johann,
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So
Okay.
those were yours?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to look. I know one of them was like Sergeant Evans or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Corporal something Capello or something like that. I can't remember the officer's name, but yeah, those were all mine that I did with him. And that was kind of my first foray into actual custom figs.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that was a fun. It was fun to kind of just start and kind of experiment with what you could do with the shading and all the colors you could use with UV. That's the one thing that that I do kind of miss with the UV stuff when we were doing it back then was you really had just a blank palette. You can do whatever you wanted with the design, and it just would print it on there.
Hmm.
Whereas when you're doing pad, you kind of are limited to the number of colors you can use at once. And then, I mean, if you want to
At
use
least if you
more,
want it to be affordable.
right, exactly. And then you can add in little elements to print, with it, or if you have more colors, you have to break it into components and then marry the two things together, which can be tricky. But and that's out of my hands usually. Those, the printers that I work with they're amazing. The magic they can do with their printers to make that stuff work and look so lined and clean is beyond my scope. But that's why I don't jump into that stuff.
Mm. Right. So you've always had the stuff outsourced to other
Yeah.
producers.
Oh yeah. I'm all for jumping in and learning a thing and doing it on myself, but I kind of got the early warning from a couple people that, pad printing can be such a time suck. So, and it can, totally take up all your time, and you have to get other jobs to come in to kind of pay for it too. So I was like, that sounds way above what I want to do. I'm more just, when I started this, it was more just the hobby, the fun thing on the weekend to do. And to come back at it as, something fun on the weekends or at night. And so I didn't want to jump in and make it a full-time gig at first. So I just never wanted to make that jump, and I'm glad I didn't. These guys that do the printing now are they're so good at what they do. It's like, why would I want to even do that?
Right. So even up to this point, this isn't your full-time gig.
It kind of was for a little bit. When the pandemic hit, for probably for the year that the pandemic was, it was almost a full-time thing because I was trying to expand it. But then, I have, like I said in the beginning, this was kind of just um, a hobby business I did on the side, and then it kind of just blew up, which I did not see. Um, and I've kind of been just what's the word I'm looking for? I kind of just been patching it as I go along, having like my kids help do all the packaging with me and shipping out, having a couple friends in the community work with some things. But it kind of just got too much. So I've kind of been crept back a little bit just to kind of put it to scale that actually works for me with, everything's going on in my personal life too. It's so much. There's there's just so much time suck that can go into running a custom business. I know Vic will agree with me. Will, all those guys, they'll say no doubt. But and somebody getting into it, it's if it gets popular, if it takes off, it takes up a lot of your time if you want to do it well. So it's one of those things that I'm trying to keep at a right balance, with this and with everything going on in my personal life. So it's been interesting, but it's still fun, still engages me, and I love the community. It's just a fun community to be part of. Everybody's so um, not just friendly, but they're open to share their ideas, their things, what you're working on, and that's what I love, the collaborative and creative spirit that I loved when I first got into being an AFL in the Lego community. Um, and that I still see on the Instagram community and everything that I work with. So it's something I don't want to give up. It's something I love to work with and do, and I see people are reacting to what I work with, so it keeps it kind of engaging, interesting, fun. So as long as that's the case, it'll keep going. So
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you're churning out some impressive stuff for a sort of side gig. So more power to you if you could keep it going that way and make it work for you. That's awesome.
yeah, thanks, man.
Speaking of the collaboration in the community, you've had a few. I don't know if there's any collaborations besides the ones with Rex, but those are all really interesting. And I'm curious how collaborations work on the scale of a business, because certainly with collaborators, like if you're just painting something and then your buddy makes you a mod and this and that, like it's very clear which person's contributing what to their skill set. I'm curious if it works similarly for your business collaborations or
Yeah, that's an
behind the
excellent
scenes.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little more clear cut, I guess, when you're doing, collabs for mods and stuff like that. So you know who's doing what, and you're building a certain thing. Um, when it comes to this, it's kind of it depends on who I'm working with. But the collabs I've done some with Diamond Custom Bricks, who's a custom business that works with a lot of my resellers. So that was kind of an easy collab. And what works with us too, in that case, and that's kind of the general way I go about most of them, is I'll do like the minifigure design, itself. And that person will come up with the custom design of um, the parts. Say it's like a hair piece or a helmet or cape, whatever it is. And they usually, for me, I'm so I'm a control freak when it comes to the finished product. I gotta love what the end product will look like. So while they design it, I still give a lot of feedback. I tell them, things that I think could be improved or things that could be modified just a little bit. And then it's kind of a back and forth. So that way it's still, I have my fingerprint on it, but they're the ones that are creating it. They're the ones that are producing it. There's just a couple cases where I'll actually do the printing of the figure with the groups that I work with. But like Rex, he does his own printing with his group. Diamond Custom Bricks does his own, and then same with Gold Bricks. But like I'm doing one that just came out last week. Um, with Kalor Project, who is one of my resellers from Hong Kong, and that one I'm going to be producing completely. Like I did I did the design from head to toe pretty much, and then I'm also producing it. So it's different. It just depends on what kind of system they have set up at each group. So Rex has his own setup. Goldbrooks has his own setup in Taiwan. Same with Diamond Custom Bricks. So yeah, it kind of depends, but like I said, I'm so much of a control freak of the design. I kind of got to have it exactly how I want it. So sometimes the designers they work with are so good, they come up with something right off the bat. I'm just like, yep, that works. It looks great. Let's do it. Other times it'll be close and I'll just want a couple modifications. Other times it's like, okay, this is this is not close. We got to start. Here's what I'm looking for. I'll give them more of and then they go and they design it. But so it's kind of, I feel bad like it's a collab, but I'm very handsy about it. They gotta kind of pass my muster. So it is a collab in nature, and it works for all of us. We usually produce something we're both proud of and that we love. So I never walk away from a collab, and I always make sure this is not just me. I always ask, is this something you agree with? And they're always like, oh yeah, totally. If it's something they don't agree with, I'll usually, like, for example, there was a figure we did earlier this year with Diamond Custom Bricks where I actually wasn't sure I wanted to use a hard plastic cape. I was thinking we would use just a regular cape. And they convinced me with their design that the hard cape would be the way to go. And I was completely convinced. And I was like, yeah, you're completely right. Let's do that. And we did that and ended up using their design. So it's kind of like it's more free flowing that way than I guess hard set, like a mod would be, or a mock that you guys do, where you're setting, I'll do this building, you do this part of the building. It's
Mm.
kind of free flowing when it comes to the collabs that I work in, at least. And I like it that way, just so that we both are happy at the end of the day with what we're working on. So
Yeah, no, that's great. It's it's refreshing to see that the custom brands in sort of the pop culture side do get together and make those collaborations. And I've just always been curious as to how people decide like who contributes what to it. Since I feel like both companies could sort of make it happen themselves, you know what I mean?
oh yeah,
So it's
definitely.
nice to hear that they're what benefits each of you are getting and that collaboration process is really refining that final figure. And I mean, I wouldn't think you're saying how you're picky, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure it's really pushing them to
It's
churn out their
probably a
best
bad
work.
thing for those guys. They're probably like, God, here he comes with more comments. My God.
Oh, it's a
Can you
millimeter
just be
off.
okay with it?
Come
Can we
on.
sell it? I know, right? So I always feel bad that I'm like, oh, I'm probably pissing these guys off, but I gotta do it. It's just a creative guy in me. I just have a certain vision. It's like, oh, it's got to meet that. So
Yeah,
I feel
totally.
bad. So I'm sure, yeah, my collaborators would probably have different opinions, each one of them. So
I don't really have much to say on this, but the I'm curious to hold one of those hard plastic capes. Those are very interesting, and I'm curious how they are in person.
they actually hold up pretty well. So I was worried that they'd be fragile, if they're thin or not, but they're not. They actually hold up really well. God, I'm trying to think of the one I had here. Let's see.
Like they're really really interesting, and they work well for like display figures. And I don't think there'd be much more to do for like modding or something like that. But
Yeah, so the thing that's funny is when I try to when I think of these designs, the first thing, because I kind of dabble in all these different areas of the custom world. So one part of me works with a lot of the photographers that like to do these cool Lego photographies where there's, they base it on like a scene in a movie or something cool in the lighting and stuff like they want to make it dramatic. So I try to make it so there's some way to pose still. So I think one of the problems I've had with some of the custom designs that come out is like, for example, when the capes just go flat against the back of the legs and you can't
Right.
bend any, the only thing they can do is stick a leg out, which that looks kind of, for
Goofy.
photographers, it's not a great look. So I try to make it where they can bend legs a little backwards, add a little bit of flow to it, but not too much. Like the Lego ones that came out recently, like the Batman from the Batman 1989 movie, like that one is almost too dramatic. So you can't put it in certain things. Like it sticks back so far that you can't put it in a couple of scenes. If you have something behind it, or if you want to change the way that it's sitting, you can't. I try to make it as possible as you can to move things around. But there's a lot of times where the constraints of the Lego shape and sizing make it hard to do that. But in my head, so that the fact that I know those photographers and that they want to pose them and things like that, I try to meet that demand and need. At other times, I also know too that the more the plastic capes add a little bit of realism to it. So a lot of collectors like that as well, but also the photographers do. But you kind of have that in between, that the collectors like certain things, the photographers, and so you try to marry a little bit of all that and
Get that
try to make it.
balance.
Yeah, so it's that's what I try to work with a little bit.
Yeah, that's difficult. I was just looking at that Batman from the recent set with the cape. I didn't know that they used a new shape on that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it was just a one piece that goes over the head. That's the head end or the helmet and the cape, and it was an interesting choice. It's just really it's hard to work with if you're gonna. It has to be just that one kind of flowy look, and that's about all you got. You can't just have them sitting at rest. So that was one of the things that was. It's cool. I loved it. I thought it was really
Yeah, very
an
unique.
interesting idea, but I was like, it's not
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 for everyone.
quite. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So you were saying that you kind of haven't really dabbled in the custom, like printed minifigure stuff. So when you do your modding, do you ever use any custom minifigs?
Oh yeah,
Like from?
like all the time. Um,
Oh, do you?
it's just not necessarily like the pop culture stuff. Like that's the world I'm not so familiar with. But people like Eclipse Graphics, Citizen Brick, people like brands like that, I use their printed items extensively.
Yeah, because you're more of military, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that new one you just posted, I saw yesterday. That was amazing. You had
Thank you.
didn't you have the one thing so I have a question for you when I looked at the picture. So you had this kind of what do they call it? The sweeping hair or whatever it is on the top, and you had the
hmm
headphones. Did you have to cut out the little parts in the
Yeah.
back to get those headphones in?
Yeah. So modify. I use the tiny tactical headset where it's just two independent little cups that you can put over the ears, but there's
Oh,
no
okay.
necessarily like band over the top or anything like that. And so the minifigure hairs typically have that sort of ear loop, but it's not deep enough on either side to just place the tiny tactical headset in. So I had to
Yeah.
carve out the sides of it and then give it some more height so that it actually looked like it was on the ear and not like drooping over the
Right
neck.
underneath it. That is
Yeah,
so cool. See, that's again way above my pay grade. I could never do that. If I'd try to cut it and half the hair would come off. I'd have to do like 20 of them to get it right.
it just takes some practice. I'm sure you'd be surprised with what you could pull off. And
Probably,
then
but again, I'm just so clumsy and I got such big fingers. Nothing small at this scale works for me, man. That's why you guys are just wizards with what you do.
it's fun. Right, it's really nice how this hobby has so many different facets for people to apply themselves in.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
love about when I jumped into Eurobricks. There was so like even the minifigure customization network, which is like the forum for anything customizing. I mean, there's so many things you can do. I mean, just like in your like I know what did you guys call yourselves? The ones that do like the cutting and stuff like that. Like I
the
heard you guys,
modders,
the
sure.
modders. Like
Mhm.
there's place for those guys. For you guys to do your thing, and then there's another one that does the painting.
That stuff blows my mind. That's above my pay grade, you know?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Like the details they can do, and just the fact that they can do it like and mirror it on both sides of like the torso or face to make it
Oh,
look equal.
geez.
I don't know how they
That's
do that. It's
now
amazing.
that isn't unreal. Any artist will tell you the first eye comes out great, and then the second eye you make is just
Right. It's like droopy or doesn't look quite
Mhm.
as symmetrical. Right. It's amazing they can do that. Like one of the people I know in here, Ross from MGF,
Oh, sure.
I every time he does one of his bits, or what's the other? LN9 is another one I
Hmm.
follow. I don't know their actual names other than Ross. I think that's the worst
LM9
part.
is Aaron.
Aaron,
Yeah.
like all those, and Moose is another one I used to follow too. Those guys
Oh,
just
right.
so many. And then when I came across your stuff, I mean, you guys just do such cool, intricate work with even like the little belts you guys make and things like that. It's just it's sick.
Ross's stuff is unreal. I've seen some of it at Virginia, and it looks just like printed quality.
I
It's
bet it'd be so cool. See, that's one thing I wish I could do is I'd never been to a convention yet, so I haven't seen any of
really
his work in person. No, I've never been to. I was so for a time about 4 years ago, I lived in Peoria. That's where kind of in the middle of Illinois, and it's about 2 hours south of Chicago. So I was always tempted to go to Brick World Chicago, and I came real close one year. The kids were actually in the back of the car. We were driving on the way, and I can't remember what it was. We were about a half an hour away, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if one of the kids got sick or something like that. We had to turn back. Um, but that's the closest I've ever come. I've never actually gone, and then I
that's
could
so
have gone during the
unfortunate.
pandemic, but of course, that happened, and
Why?
then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But totally, I'd love to go to one. It'd be interesting to just see all the stuff in person, but just to meet the people too in person.
Oh, it's all
Um,
about the people for me. I mean,
definitely, that's
when I go to Brick Fair, Virginia, I hardly look at the mocks. I'll go around once and I'm like, all right, cool, I saw it. And then the rest is just hanging out with people.
yeah, I bet, and it'd be fun that way. You get to connect with people that you've talked to and see them in person and get to actually get to know them and hang out. It's kind of like the last little thing I got to check off my list of as an A-full to do. So.
It's absolutely worth it, no matter what event you're going to. But I would highly suggest Virginia. But Brick World Chicago is also a really great one.
Yeah, that's what I hear too. Is that Virginia's the one to go to? It's just always been such a, it'd be a big travel thing for me to get on a plane and do all that, and so that's the only thing that would kind of take it away. But I think it'd be worthwhile because almost everybody I know goes to that one, and talks about it being so fun. So yeah, definitely the next step is to try to do one of those and meet all you guys up in person and see just what you guys are working on and what it looks like and get to know you guys.
Totally. No, I look forward to it.
That'd be fun.
So I must imagine you design quite a lot more than gets produced.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
how do
there's
you
lots of stuff that gets dumped. Yeah.
how do you decide if a character will make it into production?
Good question. It's kind of just an inspiration thing, or if something is kind of the stars align where it's not just inspiration of what is piquing my interest, but also what's in demand, what people want. When I first got into this, my first thinking was that I wanted to do things that were kind of the gaps that Lego was missing, like the things that they weren't quite getting after. And so that was my first aim, and so I try to do that. I try to find something that's not that people are clamoring for, that want, even me. Usually if it's something I want, I know usually it's something the community wants. So that's always the first thing. Like if it's something I think, man, we need that, and it's something that looks really, it engages me artistically. It's like, man, that looks like something that'd be fun to see in Lego form. That's kind of the first level of does it get into the design process, and then I'll get into it, and then I can usually feel if I got the sense for, am I going to be able to fix, the things I'm seeing on here into a Lego format or not. And sometimes it's a frustrating process. In some cases, it goes smooth. I've actually designed something within a 3-day process, and that's very rare. That's if everything's like lining up perfectly. It's, everything's is working. But there's other times like my Night Crusader I worked on for I think 2.5 years before I was finally like, you know what? I think I've made it to a spot where I could produce that and be happy with it. So it's a frustrating process that sometimes it works and you're going about it and you're seeing it work. And then sometimes it doesn't. You get to a spot and you're just like, it's just not looking how I want it to look. And you just put it off, and then you move on to another one that you can try, or go back to a design that you were close on, just needed to finish up. It's a weird process, and I know every artist probably has their different approach to it. Me, it's just kind of I go with whatever is working. If I'm seeing the thing, and I'm getting better at it nowadays. I think I look back at some of the designs from like 2014 or 15, and now it's just like, it's so much easier for me to come up with a figure and see if it would work or not, and know what I want out of it at the beginning versus back then. Back then, I just kind of start with a blank palette and just go like, okay, let's start with this little piece, and then go, oh no, that sucks. Nowadays I kind of have a general idea. I can generally get the idea of where the balance of things are on the torso or the legs or the arms, and just go after it. And it just takes, but my process is still slow either way, because I just, like you said, like I said before, it's nitpicking. So I'll be going along, and all of a sudden I'll hit it really well with the torso, and then I'll get to the arms, and I'll say, you know what, I need to step away. I'll walk away for a day. I come back the next day, and I just like I'll erase the arms and start over again. It's just it depends. Every design's different. It depends if I can see it in the beginning or not. But like I said, I think nowadays I see exactly what I want usually in the beginning, to start the design. And then it helps also that I've been doing it for how many years? 6, 7 years. So it's easier to get started and to get into the process than it did in the beginning. Um, I don't know if it's for that, like that for you guys that do modding and stuff, but I erase stuff all the time. I'll get through, I'll be doing, 3 days of work, 8 hours, and I'll have to throw it at the end of it just because it's not where I want it. But it's in terms of like what gets produced or not, it just depends if I get to a spot where I feel it's good and I can get it out there and it's something that I think will sell. And usually if it's a collab, if they agree and like the design also. So it kind of depends. It's just a kind of free flowing, whatever comes out. Usually it's nice if it comes out at the same time that something that it's based on is, but
Right.
usually not. I'm usually I wait till there's more references if possible, because there's nothing worse than like doing things at the beginning, like Lego does. Even they did like a Spider-Man, I think, for Civil War, and they had the artistic designs of it before the movie was made, and then it came out and they're completely different.
Hmm.
So that happens a lot. So a lot of times I usually wait till there's confirmed, like in the trailers, and sometimes even that gets changed around.
I,
Um,
I noticed you mentioned that with I think it was Moon Knight that people were really wanting on your 14K contest, and there you just mentioned that there wasn't enough resources out there to make a good design for it.
right. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. For the new one, for the one that's going to be in the MCU, yeah. There's a picture, I think, and that's about it. Not much
And
to
the
work with
picture's
there.
probably got like 5 pixels in the whole thing, so it's like, what are you working off of?
Right now, it's like, and it's from the hips up. So what am I going to do with that? So it'd be nice, but it's a little too early. Yeah, but I can totally see. I know there's a lot of people that were excited for that. When they posted that, but yeah, there's just not enough to work with.
Yeah, and it certainly is the same for modding. It's never easy to scrap those kind of projects you've poured so much time into, but it happens. I
Right.
feel like typically with the modders, though, they'll if it doesn't work, they'll just keep brute forcing it and keep on trying until they can make it work somehow.
Just push through it, man. Yeah, or
Yeah,
cover it up with something else that makes it better. Yeah.
right. Oh, that's the big one. So if you make a mod and it's good on one side but bad on the other, you've just found which side you have to take a photo from.
That's awesome. Yeah,
It's
I can
it's
totally see that.
ridiculous. Or it's like, oh well, the back it got totally messed up, but it won't be in the photo, so it doesn't matter. There's all sorts of it's so
Yep.
funny.
Yep, exactly. I can
It
totally see
it
that.
it just came to me now, and I don't think I've ever thought of it this way, but you know that there's the Homer Simpson meme where he's looking skinny, but it turns to the back, and he's got all those paper clips like holding his fat
Right.
together.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
I've seen that one.
exactly that. It's
Yeah,
exactly that.
I can totally see that. Yep. And the funny thing is I've actually done that for a couple renders where you only see the front. I think in the beginning I did that. And then all of a sudden I get to the back, I'm like, "Oh, no, I got to change that." And luckily I didn't show it. So then like I'd get to the point where it's actually being printed and people are like, "Oh yeah, that is better. I'm glad you did that." I didn't see the back before. And so like, yeah. So I get away with that. But nowadays I show all sides, and I stick to that just because, like I said, by the time I get to that point, I gotta be happy with it, and so I
Right.
just let it fly out there. It's
Yeah,
very
I don't think your
rare.
fans are gonna let it go if you post something and
Oh
not
gosh,
release
no,
it.
no, they would they would let me have it like no business. If I came back with something that looked different, they'd be happy. But I think for the most part, I'm usually pretty happy with it. I can say most of the times I'm 99.99% good to go. There's just a rare time where someone points out like, "Oh, didn't you see this in the reference of the movie?" And I was like, "Oh crap. That's something that needs to be in there." And the only way I go about changing that is if I'll do something on Instagram. I'll post a story saying, "Hey, do you guys prefer this, or do you want to keep it the way it was?" And if it's a like ridiculous majority, like 98%, I'll go like, "All right, I'll change it." But that's very rare. Usually, I don't think any time in the last year, I can't even think if there's been one in the last year or two that I've changed after I've posted it. But I'm sure I'll get comments in Instagram like crazy going like, no, dude, you changed these. But I can't remember. I can't. It's so funny. So there's people that are customers that know my stuff way better than I do, and I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. That's right. Didn't even know that." They'll pull us out these things that like I'm sure I won't even remember these things that I've changed in the past. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of funny when you do those mods that you just got to do it. Keep going. Like I don't know how you guys would keep going and cover that up, but you guys have such special talents for that. I'm sure there's you guys know all the tricks of the trade to get by.
Yeah, I mean, they're always learning too. There's always some new way or new technique, or then a new product releases from somebody, and it's like, all right, well, what can we do with this? How
Yeah.
can we break this time?
And plus, you guys, that's one thing I miss about the early days back in the Flickr and Eurobricks days is there was more of a collaborating of all the different artists and sharing their tricks of the trade and what they did. I'm sure you guys get that in your modding community also, where it's more um, where you guys talk about your techniques, or I don't know, do you guys share your techniques, or is it more
Yeah,
secret
yeah.
based?
I don't think anyone tries to keep it secretive, but just because the essence of like Instagram group chats where you can only have X amount of people as things are being worked on, like it's sort of secretive, I suppose, because it's just not fully out there. But as soon as something's posted, anyone who asks, like, "Oh, how'd you do this?" Like, everyone's more than willing to share exactly how they went about it,
Yeah,
techniques for it, and then that's the cool like, just the widespread collaboration of the community
yeah.
is that people will take that and then they're making it on their own mocks and they're expanding it. Like, there was recently, no, I say recently, but I mean, this is probably like 2 or 3 years now, one of the most popular mods that people were doing was there was a brick arms vest, for a British World War II soldier,
Oh yeah, I
which
remember that
had,
one.
like, these long 2 long pouches,
Yeah.
and so people would just they'd buy 2 of them, cut, one of the pouches and stuff it in the middle, and it made it like a Chi-Com rig for, like, AK vest.
Oh really?
And, very simple, very straightforward, and it was just a product that wasn't available anywhere else. So, I mean, that was ran rapid. Everyone was using that. Everyone had it.
Yeah.
Um, just super common mod, but yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, that people are taking what others are coming up with and running with it.
I think that's the thing I miss about Flickr. Like Instagram has been an awesome experience since I joined it, but back in the Flickr days, I do remember kind of more of a where you'd have those chat groups where you just talk about certain things and you'd share those. And I think the move over to Instagram, I think there's some of that, but at least on my end, it's not as much as it was back in the Flickr days. I think that'd be the only thing that would be the downside in my
Well, on
opinion, but it might
Flickr
be different.
Yeah, on Flickr, you had to use, either the Flickr Mail or everyone would just use Skype at the time
Oh yeah, yeah,
because
exactly.
Flickr Mail is like an official email. You couldn't get it on the mobile app. You're like, "Dear sir, blah, 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 blah." Like, it's not as casual as it is today with Instagram, but,
Right. But I
yeah,
do
there was
like
a
that
deep
though.
yeah, there's the pros and cons to it. That there was a
Exactly. Yeah.
deep connectivity on people using, like, Skype and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yep, agreed. That's exactly what we did back in the day. The people that I used to know on Flickr did the same thing. We'd get these big groups on Skype talking and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Going back a little bit, is there any of those figures that you've had to scrap and put aside that you still wanna revisit?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Probably. I'm sure I do have a couple in there. I'd have to almost think. Nothing comes up to mind that I got to a certain point. I did have one that I made for gosh, I'm thinking way back in the day for this one. There was actually a few of them for the Dark Knight that I had that I haven't made that have just been sitting there that I'm sure I could go back and improve on and release. And I'm sure people would want me to. I just haven't had, there's just so many things that come in that I'm kind of just grabbing onto. But yeah, probably some from back in that kind of era and slash theme. I know I had a couple for like the side characters, like like Alfred and what was Officer Blake, things like that. Just these,
Sure.
ones that aren't as big. And I think they just kind of fell on the side just because they weren't as big and they weren't as in demand at the time. But I'm sure people would eat them up if I made them. I'm sure. But yeah, I've never really revisited it yet. But I probably should. It's just sitting there, these ones that have gotten done, and I'm sure they're pretty close to to good. I just never kind of pushed them through. But yeah, I can't really think of any other ones though. I'm sure there's tons of Spider-Man that I threw away along the way. There's tons of quote arachnids that are sitting on the shelf somewhere in the design space that I have not finished or finished and just didn't like because I'm a fiend for those. So
Yeah, I mean the recent Iron Arachnid is incredible with the metallic ink.
thanks, man. Yeah, I was that's one I've been wanting to do just in that way for so long. And when it finally came around that I could do it that way, I had to jump on it. It was just like one of those, that's my favorite look. And it had so many iterations on the way in that once we finally got to a spot where I was happy with it. Because the thing that you got to know about that is the material, that these guys did on the outside had to be not just shiny and smooth and keep the shape and everything and not be too much of a if you put a coating on top of a Lego piece, as I'm sure it
Yeah,
adds
scratching
bulk
right
and
off.
yeah, and you can't do it, but it has to be a certain thickness, smooth, and it also has to be so it doesn't chip off. That's the biggest thing. Lego pieces are tough to have things on top of it and stick. But they found this material that worked just perfectly. And when we got to that point, I was like, oh, I got to do it. And then so I just thought, if I'm going to redo it, I'm going to do it all the way to the tops. Have the gauntlets on there, have it where it's got the different heads. But yeah, it was fun to come up with that one because that's one I wanted to do just like that for a long time. So
Yeah, that one's incredible. And I also noticed on the Prodigal armor, it has a bit of a metallic thing. Is that using the same process or?
same process. Yep, exactly. And then
Awesome.
just a different color. And it was the toughest thing with that one was actually getting the color right. Because there's kind of a look to that one. It's not quite gold. It's more of a lighter gold, almost like a tan color.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was tough to get to that exact color to get it just right. But once we did, then that was the same thing. Um, but yeah, they did it. They do a really good job. I don't know how they do this stuff, but once they tell me they can do something, I'm like, oh, I'll play with that. We'll do something, and then I usually can find something. But this was one the minute I heard they could do that, I was like, okay, we're gonna do that figure. Because it's one I've wanted to do for a long time. And there's a couple others that are using that same effect. Um, there's a collaboration I'm doing with Rex um, called the Infinite Armor that's using the same materials, that's on the same coating process. And I just got the samples for that actually last week, and it looks nice. I think people are gonna like that one too. So yeah, it's just a fun process to see what all these people are pushing boundaries, and so I'm sometimes seeing those and then asking my production crew if they can do that, and then they'll say yes or no, and then if it is yes, how I can do it, and if it's no, what's my limits, can I do some things close to it? But that's the fun part of it, is seeing where I think the future of custom Legos is going is interesting because there's so many people that are in it now and pushing the boundaries that I'm a huge fan of. And because I mean, people are always surprised that I collect on the side. I'm like, yeah, of course, that's the first thing I do. I'm an AFOL first. I'm a collector. I got sucked into this world just like everybody else did. And so that's my first thing. So I actually collect these and I get ideas because I can hold them in my hand and see what these great creators did and kind of learn from that and see if I can add it to my own creation process. Because people are pushing boundaries a lot. I mean, even Nate's minifigs with the things he's doing, he's doing some interesting stuff with the resins that are pushing boundaries too. That we're trying to bring into I think our custom side of things with the production. That I think there's a lot of interesting things going on from that perspective.
Yeah, the resin printing world is really opening the door for a lot of new people to just enter in a big way to the production side and business.
Yeah, and I think it's improving a lot too because I remember when it first started. I don't know if it was resin or just I don't know all
It
the
was just regular
technicalities.
like 3D printing probably.
Yeah, yeah, and it was okay. And I remember ordering some of that, and it looked all sandy on the outside, and I thought, that's not really something we want to go with. Nowadays, it's so smooth, and I mean, some of these guys produce stuff. If you put it next to the custom made, products that we make, it's pretty close. I mean, if they get any closer, I
Yeah,
don't see why you wouldn't just do 3D printing or resin
it's
printing,
it's
whatever you
getting
call it.
real close. It's going to be an interesting future seeing how this shakes out.
And it offers more possibilities. I mean, if you can do it on your own, like if you just the only thing that would hold you back is being able to design it. But I mean, if you have people like Nate or other guys that are like him doing things that, you can just come up on the fly and, print these things. I just don't know how many you can print on a 3D printer or whatever they call it, resin
The
printer.
resin beds get pretty big. So
Oh,
depending
really?
on, or you just run multiple small ones at once, and yeah, the production side of it, it's possible to scale.
So that, I mean, there's a lot of exciting. I mean, you can do so much more customization that way. I mean, like you guys do with, I think he did like a recent Batman thing where you just add things on the front and back and all these, and it
Yeah, yeah,
adds another level of customization that's super interesting and fun. It's almost pushing the boundaries of where we're at on the production side. Like, what can we do to kind of match that? And so,
yeah. And there's
um,
certain elements that you just can't capture with sort of traditional like injection molding and stuff. Like certain elements or shapes that would be nearly impossible or just cost prohibitive.
right. Yeah. And I'm sure for you modders and the guys that are doing the paint stuff, that all these little pieces that you can add onto there that are, so quickly produced, and these small pieces that you can just add in there, it's got to be kind of exciting for you guys too.
Totally.
Yeah, it's got to be fun. There's a lot of possibilities out there. It looks like a lot of things I think things are opening up just because of technology improving and all those things, allowing the custom makers in the Lego community to do this stuff. It's just really interesting, and that's why I think it'd be fun too to go to these conventions to see where they're taking things, where you guys are using all these customization parts, and where things are going with that, because it sounds super exciting. It looks fun.
So, as a collector, you don't have to play favorites, but which brand do you have the largest collection of?
Oh wow, it's an excellent question. I think the ones that I got the most of right now would probably be, there's a brand called Life Bricks. I think we were talking about it earlier. Yeah, I have a lot of theirs. I noticed I have these cases, and I keep getting more and more cases. I'm sure
Oh,
my
geez.
wife loves seeing that, taking up more space on the counters and stuff. But there's like a whole case of that, and I think I had to get another one because I got more coming from them through trades and things like that. But I would say before that probably was a guy named Christo, which I
Mm,
know he's kind of like the gold standard in customization. So all of his stuff sells for ridiculous prices and stuff. But I used to, when he first started, I started getting a lot of his stuff. Um, and then his stuff became more and more rare. It's harder to find. So I'm not as in tune with a lot of these as some of the other collectors are. But I think that was the biggest one I had before. But I unloaded a lot of his stuff probably about 2 years ago. But that was my biggest one other than those two. But
yeah.
I collect a lot of them. I was actually just looking at the different cases and how many different brands are in there, even just like the one or two figures. So I have a lot of different brands, but yeah, those are probably the two biggest I had.
I only just got my first Christo piece. It was one of those painting frames. The
Oh yeah, yeah.
painting was irrelevant. There wasn't any options I really loved, but I just needed the frame for something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
nice.
yeah, it came
Those
out.
are nice frames though, yeah.
They're beautiful, really beautiful.
I actually
And
have, now that I think about it, in my drawer, I could just look right now. I have a bunch of those that I got that I don't know what to do with. I was gonna make like a an art gallery looking thing
mm,
or something, but I haven't done that yet. And I just have them just sitting in these cases, not being shown. Yeah, I should. Yeah, I have a bunch of those too. Those are pretty cool. I at least got the ones that are all like based on real paintings in real life, but done in
yeah,
like Lego form. I didn't get any of those like superhero ones or things like that.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I remember when they released. I regret kind of not getting some of the paintings I really would have cared for, but it's all good. I'm
yeah,
painting my own. It's coming
yeah.
together
See, you
well.
got the skills to do that, so that'd be kind of cool.
I was surprisingly so. I finished painting Van Gogh's Starry Night, and
Seriously.
yeah, here I'll send you a photo on
Oh, I gotta
Instagram.
see this.
I'm amping up to make like a huge, not huge per se, but a museum sort of heist scene. And I
Ooh,
also
nice.
received Dash Bricks hooked me up with from Leylai. I don't know how you pronounce that, but they have like a marble statue, and that kind of set me on this whole craze of getting a bunch of sort of museum pieces.
Yeah. Oh my God, you did that? Oh my God, that is amazing.
Thank you.
I love that we're doing this over a non-visual
Yeah, yeah.
format so that people can't see this. But yeah,
It'll all be in the wrap up post. Everyone
oh, they
could
gotta see
find it
this. This
there.
is amazing. And you did that all through just paint.
Yeah.
That
Don't
is
ask me
so
how.
sick.
It's like
Oh my,
a
see you
fever
guys.
dream. You don't know what went on during it, but
It's probably the same for Van Gogh. Yeah, the That's just amazing that you can do that
I
at
still
such
at least
small
have
scale.
both ears, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at that. So is that the way that the frame came to from Christo?
No, I got a plain black one, but it was like glossy. It looked weird. You couldn't actually see in the details. So in typical fashion, I had to modify a $30 piece that I just bought.
Oh
So I
wow.
just took some like brass paint I had, quick little dry brush on it.
Yeah, so for the listeners listening to this, when you look at it, it's just and they can look at the Instagram picture when you post it too. The brass work around it that you did is looks so nice too. It looks like an official like this is how they would present it, at the Met or whatever this I can't remember where this paint is actually at, but this is
I'm
what it
not
would look
sure.
like.
Yeah,
That's so good. Anyway, I'm super impressed by the fact you got all those little details and the swirl patterns and all that. That's ridiculous.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Something I'll never be able to do.
I found out the using the doing stuff in the impressionist style is a bit of the cheat code for painting that small because it doesn't have to be like photorealistic. It's inherently
Right.
not photorealistic, and as long as you could paint little dots, like or lines, you could kind of get there. So
That's true. That's a good point. But still, it's impressive, man, that you can recreate it like that. It's almost like I'd want to commission someone to do something like that. That's impressive, man. Yeah, so um yeah, I think I have a whole bunch of those too. I should see if I have those same kind of frames too. It makes me want to see what the frames look like. I know I made a couple different ones, but yeah.
mhm. Going back a bit, when you're designing the minifigures, what do you feel like is the most difficult challenge to overcome with the minifig form?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, the first thing right off the bat is the fact that, the Lego torso shape is it's like right off the
Reversed.
bat it makes somebody look like they're fat right off the bat. So if it's not like a suit or something, that's the first thing you're dealing with. The other thing is I think the biggest challenge in a design standpoint is the legs. Legs, they have their proportions and they're not in line with an actual leg proportion. Like if you look like for example, I'm trying to think of one. Let's just take if you're thinking of like a normal leg, you have the knee and where it's at and you have all the things above it and below it. And then if you look at the Lego leg, where a knee should be is right kind of a little bit below where that bend,
Curve.
yeah, the
Yeah.
curve hits. And then you're trying to smash all that stuff above it and below it, and that you kind of have to make, like Lego does it a lot where they have to make a decision where you're kind of like, well, we'll just not include this part, but we'll get the bigger things just to make it look that way. And so you kind of have to make those tough decisions of, what things get smushed, what things don't, just to make it cleaner looking. I think the legs is probably the biggest issue. There's just so much you can pack in there and make it look sloppy, or you can clean it up and just include some of the things. Sometimes I'm lucky and there's not much on there, like just a knee pad or something, but I think that's probably the one that's the toughest. The
Knee
other
pads are
thing,
so funny too because we just commonly accept now that knee pads are on like the shin area.
right,
Like in
right,
in reality, it's like in between that and the curve, and it's just
right.
like, all right,
Exactly. It's so funny when you look at a lot of those. You see knee pads, and it looks like if you looked at it on a human, it would be like in the middle, like yeah, the shins. But and we're totally cool with it because I think we all understand that that flat part is just there's not much room there. So
it's just leg. There's no parts of a leg. It's just there's a leg.
exactly right. So I think that's probably the biggest one is the legs, and then the arms. The problem is the arms. If you're printing from a pad print perspective, there's only so much. Like if you filled as much as you could on a as much paint as you could on a pad, and then you print it down on the arm, it only goes to like probably half of the way around the arm on both sides, right?
Right,
So
right.
there's a gap, and I know a lot of customizers have been pushing it lately to cover from one end all the way to the other, and that's tough to do. I mean, there's a lot of tricks of the trade in there that each of us have to do that, but it's not easy. And so to get things to align on that curved space is hard. Um, the other thing that's become a little bit easier, but was hard in the beginning, is um, getting things on the top of the foot. If you look at
Mhm.
it, there's like that L curve right in the corner, and it used to be impossible for pads to get in there to color things. But there's a way to do that now with certain shaped pads that make it a little more possible. So at least you can get color in there at the very least. Whether you can get detail, that's a whole nother story. And I haven't quite gotten to that point where I'm convinced that you can get detail in that curve, at least to look good. So those are probably the three areas. I think you can deal with the head. That's okay. It's the other, like the shape of the torso, the length of the legs, and the roundness of the arms make it tough. But
That would be an exciting improvement if you could have like shoelaces per se on the top of the foot.
right. Well, the funny thing is, a lot I noticed like Life Bricks, they do like their shoelaces kind of on the front toe part,
Right, right.
which works for some people. For me, I don't, it doesn't quite like, it looks great. But for me, it just like when you look at it from the front, it looks good, but when you turn it to the side, it just doesn't quite, like you say, it'd be cool to get it like on top of the foot, but we're not quite there yet, in my opinion, or at least not with the high end printers I work with, and that other people have been working with lately. So we'll see. Maybe they do.
Yeah, I'll appreciate all developments and improvements that people are trying to make, but they don't always pan out.
No, but it's a messy process. It takes a lot of experimenting. Like you have to fail quite a bit. You have to see where the limits are, and you have to push the boundaries. And it's going to be mistake driven in parts, which I know collectors won't like in the beginning, but it gets us to a point that's pretty cool. Like where you can print all the way around, like with this iron arachnid, where you can go from one end of the arm all the way around to the other end and actually have a continuous pattern. That took a lot of mistakes along the way, to get to that point. So
Yeah. The mistakes are the best failure. I mean,
exactly.
best way to obviously they're the best failure. The
Exactly.
best way to learn. The best way to learn.
Yep, exactly.
So in the Instagram poll, there was a lot of people asking about the Mark 50. I don't know. I don't know.
The
Everyone's just
the
asking
inf-
where it is. You could take it away. I don't have the prior
There's a
knowledge
lot of
on this.
asking for that one, huh? So yeah, the infinite armor, that's the one I'm doing with
Oh,
uh
okay.
Rex that I was talking about. That's doing the same kind of design coating as the iron arachnid. And that one, like I said, last week I got the last sample and it's approved. So it just now comes down to the printing. Unfortunately, so the groups I work with are actually over in Hong Kong and China. And I don't know if people have been watching the news. I actually caught it late. Was that they're having an energy shortage there? So
Oh, really?
on top of COVID slowing things down, now they have an energy shortage, which means the amount of electricity at each of the factories is limited, apparently. So
I didn't
that's
hear about
another
this. I'm gonna have to go
slowdown.
look into that. I had heard about their like Goldman Sachs of China crashing and stuff like that a month or so ago. But
Yeah, and I was kind of yeah, I was wondering about how that. I don't know how it's shaken out quite yet. I mean, it was kind of a big piece of news that people weren't paying attention to. But yeah,
Mhm.
I've been paying a lot more attention to Chinese news lately, ever since I like probably the last 5 6 years, because of that I work with the companies over there.
Right.
But yeah, that's another thing too, that it's just kind of weird times, man. We're just in a funky spot with all the COVID stuff, interrupting worldwide trade, shipping, all that stuff. And then you look at the production side of it too. Is just there's only so much energy and space that can be used at a certain time. So for those folks that were asking to get back on the question, it should be any time. It just depends on when they can tool up the printers and all that and get these done, because it got approved. So
Awesome.
um, I think those folks will be happy at least.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure you made a bunch of people happy with that.
Well, somewhat. They'll still be like, when's it coming? I gotta say, that's probably my biggest thing that I deal with on a customer service basis is I get so many questions where it's like, so when is this coming? And that's the tricky thing that's in this part of the business that you don't see in a lot of other things, where, you have a date that you're hoping to get to, but there's so many complex things that happen between the render that you show everybody to the actual production. Some things are smooth and you get done in like 3 months and you're like, woohoo, I'm ahead of schedule. But more often than not, it's, way longer than it takes. So, you go from saying it'll take 6 months, but it actually takes like 9 because there was one last tweak that actually took 2 months to do. And this is one of those cases where this one should have been done like 5 6 months ago, but we had two things that we had to fix, that were tricky. There's these wing things on the back, and to get those to look, and to fit the right way around the neck and everything with the coating that we were using was tough. And then there's also the weapon. Um, the group that was producing those actually went out of business, so we had to use a different group that works with my production company. And then we had to make sure that it, when it clicks into the hand, that it doesn't chip, that it's nice and solid, and the colors are right. So once we got that down, which just happened the last month or so, that was the last little hurdle. So yeah, you got a whole full story on that one because I get so many questions about it. Yeah. But yeah, that's usually a good sign though, because that means people are really engaged and interested in it. So I'm all about that. I'm on the same side as a fan. I want this thing done too because I can't wait to see it. So I can totally understand their look for that one. But yeah, the Infinite Armor is coming soon. Don't worry.
Oh, there you go. Now you do. Is all of your releases a pre-order?
Probably for the last, well, it's been that way. So when I first started, the first three figures I think it was I did were actual produced, and then I sold them as they were produced. But the funny thing is, when you look back at historically when that started, I had one figure that was successful, and the other one was just a slow burner. Like it didn't really catch on at first, and so I was ready for my next figure to do, but I didn't quite have the funds because that was the beginning, and it wasn't quite. I needed both of them to sell to make the next one because there was more printing involved and blah blah blah. And so from that figure on, I think it was my fourth figure. From then on, I've always had pre-sales. And I found it works because it's for me at least from a production side, because I can tell how many people are actually interested in it, so I don't have to make more than are necessary. I can, so I don't have like 60 of them or 100 of them sitting on a shelf not getting sold. And then that deflects from me doing more figures. So I've kind of got it down to a science where I usually have funds from previous sales mixed in with a pre-orders, and I can tell where the demand might be, so I can go that way. But there's been a few times where I didn't, where something was made really quick because it was not that many colors or something. But for the most part, it's all pre-orders. I think the only one that I don't do is based on the resellers I work with. There's one reseller I work with, Gold Bricks. They want to produce it first, and then they release it, and then they just, go with the sales as they come in. So, but yeah, it's all pre-orders for the most part, and I think people can trust over the years with me that when I put up a render like we were talking about before, they know that's my promise to them that I'm going to
Yeah.
get them a figure that looks as
Yeah.
close to that as possible. And I think I've done a pretty good job on that usually. There's sometimes where I have, ideas because I have a general idea and knowledge about pad printing that this is possible. And then you actually get into it with the actual parts and you realize, oh crap, this isn't working like I thought it would. And so I have to tweak things. But for the most part, because of how far we are in pad printing and everything, it works out pretty well. But I think people generally, trust that that's going to happen. That usually whatever I show is what's going to happen, what
Yeah,
comes
you,
out.
you've certainly built up that rapport. I think the iffy issues with pre-orders come in when there's like digital printers where the quality isn't matching up to the sleek render.
Right, right. And that's the thing is, and it's not just digital printers. I mean, you can have some bad pad printers. I think this, there's the big hubbub about pad versus
Digital, right?
digital. And I guess I could jump into this one and say on my end, I think it's both of them could be good. It depends on the printer. There's
Yeah,
some
no. The
excellent
beef,
UV.
the drama is overhyped. Like,
Right, it's super. So here's the thing. I'm obviously a pad print guy because I mean, I all my figures are pad printed except for I think two of them. But that doesn't mean that I don't approve of digital. The UV printing, there's a lot of good UV printing out there. I mean, Vic knocks it out of the park. He has some great prints. Does great quality too. There used to be a one called Online Sailing. I don't know what happened if
oh
he's
yeah,
still doing this stuff. He did great quality, but it depends on the printer. I mean, and the printer itself, like the physical printer, and knowing how to use it. Because there's some magicians that do some great UV work. I think actually LifeBricks does some UV prints that have turned out really great. So it depends. I mean, you can get some great stuff that's UV, and I know there's some people that when they look at it, it's different quality. Like you can feel it on the figure, and some people don't like that. But at the same time, it also is more durable. So I mean, there's benefits and negatives to both. It just depends on what you're looking for from a figure, I guess.
right. And it seems like, especially with a lot of the pop culture collectors, like they really, namely Sket, who huge shout
Oh,
out
good old
made
scat.
this
Yes,
podcast come together, but
exactly.
very anti-digital for those sort of collector purposes.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back on that one. Yeah, he loves his he loves his pad, and I can see his angle, but at the same time, I can totally see the angle of those that like especially the military printers. They mostly do UV, and so but
Yeah,
you
the
get what you want
durability
from there,
is
right?
big.
Yeah, I mean you can get there, and it's cost effective, so you can get them cheaply. and you get a lot of coverage. So like they can print all over the figure and
And
print
typically
lots of
colors
stuff.
are a lot more important for might be a lot more colors involved with camo patterns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's much more customizable. You can do more things with it, so it's got its pluses and minuses. So, I'm the Switzerland when it comes to this one. I'm on both sides of it, baby. But at the same time, people
I'm with
know
you.
the stuff that I sell is pad, just because I think that's just where my side of the market is. But it's both ways. I think it just depends on what you're looking for. The nice thing about that I always say to everybody whenever people make comments about things, like, oh, this one's better than this one, and I say, it's not about that. It's about what each person is looking for. I mean, the beautiful thing about the Lego community, the AFOLs, there's such a variety of wants and needs and likes and dislikes that you're going to find your niche. If you're into UV, there's stuff for you. If you're into pad, there's stuff for you. If you like both, you can get both. It's such a wide variety and rainbow of interests that you don't have to worry about it. So if somebody makes like I know I was listening to Vic's podcast. I'm the same way. If somebody can make something that's just like yours, just in a different way, beautiful. That's awesome. The variety is kind of the spice of life, and it's nice that you get that in the Lego community. That if somebody makes a Spider-Man of a certain type, and then another person does, they'll have a different take on it, and people are going to like one or the other, and it's they're both going to do just fine if they're well made. So it's the more the merrier. It's all good. It's just like Vic says. It's the problem is when somebody takes someone else's design and does the same thing, and that's where the problems come up. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm both ways. I like UV, and I like. I actually kind of miss the days, like I said before, where UV offers so much possibility. You can just do whatever you want, and it's cheaper to produce. So that would be kind of fun to dabble in just making like limited little things here and
It's
there with
it's
that.
sort of like the resin printing to injection molding. Like there's
Exactly.
certain quality elements and finishes that the high end like the pad printing or the injection molding offer, but you get so much versatility with the resin and UV and stuff like that.
It's so
Funny enough,
true.
they're both actually UV cured.
Yes. Yeah.
Thinking about it now, huh?
That's so true. Yeah, and I think that's so true. That's exactly the point. So the same with resin UV or 3D versus injection molding. It just you get your benefits and downfalls to both. And I can tell you, it'd be fun. If you're someone that was more of the injection molding at first, there's a lot of when I first made the jump into making those injection molding parts, that was a huge learning curve because there's so many things that are possible, and you have to know what the breaking points of some designs are of whether it'll work in an injection machine or not. It's tough to learn that, but that's kind of the nice thing too about the resin printers is that you don't have that. I mean, there are some parts of that still. I heard some of the things Nate was talking about that you have with that, but I think there's a lot more tolerance for the resin stuff than there is for injection. Injection molding is very touchy. You have to get it just right. And I can't tell you how many times and how many people I went through. I went through was it four? Three different production companies before I found my home with the one I've been with ever since, just to get the Night Crusader helmet. That took I think, yeah, I want to say the company went through four different production groups and a ton of money trying to find
I'll
that to work.
imagine.
And I can't tell you how many failures we had before that finally worked. And then I've been working with this group ever since. But man, that's one thing that you have to realize is there are benefits and downfalls to each one of those. So, um,
Are you yourself designing the accessories that you get injection molded?
I have someone. No, I can't. I wish I could. I've been trying to
I,
learn.
I,
So
I figured I'd ask just because you said you didn't have any talent for the designing stuff when you started. So I was like, maybe we got maybe we got something there.
yeah, no, I've looked into this probably 2 years ago or so because there was a design that was kind of frustrating me, and I was like, I probably could do this myself. And then I actually jumped into it and tried. The programs that you have to use for those are so complex that it would take so much time to learn that I was just like, I just don't have the time to do that. But um, yeah, I work with other designers, kind of a fleet of them that kind of depends on what I'm looking for. But yeah, they do the designs. I like give 100 degrees of feedback on stuff before it's perfect, and then they usually give me the file, and then I can go away from there. But yeah, so I work with other designers on that one.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. There's a lot of talented designers out there we've discovered with this influx of resin printing.
I know, and the funny thing is, but a lot of people can't find them. I get questions all the time about like, who can do this kind of stuff, and I know a couple of them, but I know there's more that I don't know that I wish I could point people to, because I know people. There's a lot of people that one of the biggest questions I always get is, how do you do what you do, and how can I get started? And luckily, I can point them to like this interview, or I did an interview a while back with Hello Bricks in France. I don't know if they're still around or not, but I usually point them to that interview, and it gives a lot of information about pad printing versus UV and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people ask, how do you get your custom molded, things like that? Who designs those? And there are a lot of people out there. I just don't know them. I just know the ones that I work with, and they're super overwhelmed with work already. But it'd be nice if there's more Nates out there that could do that kind of stuff.
Right, totally. All right, I think before we go into the copper drop, I just want to give some fan service to Sket for as a thanks for getting this to happen. He asked two questions. First, will you ever get tired of him asking, "Will you make this?" or "Will you make that?"
Never. Nope. I think it's funny because he knows when I give him his little I'll give him the emojis back that just because some of them are repeats, but yeah, I'm always open to suggestions from people. I think that's probably the second biggest thing I get a lot is people's suggestions on stuff. So I love that. This gets a little more on the consistent side where he's always asking. I think he had his first love child of that request when I forgot who made the Squirrel Girl.
Yeah,
He
I
had
knew it.
requested
I
for
knew it.
years on end.
I was about to say it. He's always talking about Squirrel Girl. It's like
That was his baby, and so when they made that, I know he was in heaven. So, but yeah, I'm always open for suggestions. Love them. I'll take them all day.
And then lastly, what's your favorite MCU movie?
Oh, well, it's so my daughter's a huge Marvel fan too, so we talk about it all the time. My favorite right now, I'll say right now, I'm going to put my chips on Endgame still. There was a lot of payoff that happened in that one. However, I can still get the debates about Infinity War. Those two are they're both very good. It just depends on, are you in for the total destruction and you're, the Mad Titan himself, or are you all about the fruition of all the stuff that happened for 10 years? So it's kind of, they're both, I think they're kind of, depends on the day.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the long form answer to that easy question.
Those are very rewarding. It's very difficult to close something out. So those both get my respect.
But I got to say, there's so many I have my top 5 flops all the time. It changes, depends on what I'm watching.
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right. So Copper Drop. This is the segment where we go through a couple upcoming items or items from recent times, and you let me know if you'd cop it, if you'd buy it, or if you're going to drop it.
Let's do it.
And it's all hypothetical, of course. But first up, we have Nate's Doc Ock arms, a resin printed item. How are you feeling about these?
I absolutely love those things. First of all, it's so ingenious, so it's an obvious cop for me. The way that Nate was able to get something that we've been using all those little connector pieces to try to do something like that. And he did it so effortless. Well, I know it wasn't effortlessly because it took a long time, but the way that he's able to get what we've all wanted to see out of that, there's no way you can't cop that. It's so brilliant the way that you can move those, the way that you can get them to stand. He knocked it out of the park. That's such a masterpiece of design work by Nate. So definite cop for me.
Yeah. I mean, even without a use for them, I was nearly pressing the pre-order button on those. Like, figured I could manage something. They're too incredible.
Right. And I'm sure there's got to be something you could do with military, I suppose, with like just not maybe the hands on the end, but like the arms themselves, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm excited to see those get into people's hands for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, there is Life Brick X Loco Mock Breaking Bad figures. These are an oddball item that came across my feed recently, and I was very tempted on these as well. I love the hazmat gear that it's got on, and the helmet, and the respirator is really great. How you feeling about these?
Good. I gotta say another cop. This was an easy one for me. There's 2 problems with this one. First of all, I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan. So I love that show. And I've seen like Citizen Brick did one way back when that was pretty nice too, and it came with even a set, I think, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they made a set,
and that was pretty nice. But this one it's such a good likeness for So from my boy from Breaking Bad that I have to cop it. And I actually did cop it technically. So
Good, good.
yeah. So that one's in the arsenal coming soon. But yeah, that was a great design by Life Brick.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of those sort of respirators on top of the head, like injections of that becoming
Right.
more available would be awesome.
I think too, for you guys that were doing like the modding and stuff, looking at it, zooming in on the one that's down, like the one that's all the way down,
Hmm.
you guys probably would want it more so like the top would be down so you can put hair pieces and things like that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on the Jesse figure, it looks like they even changed the mold and it has the hair with it.
Oh yeah, now that I sick, yeah, that's true. I didn't see that one. I was just looking at Walter there for, but yeah, I guess that's true. There you go.
Yeah, these are incredible.
Yeah, love them. Cop, definite.
Speaking of incredible, the last item up here blew me away. AV Figures Day of the Dead Trooper. How are you feeling about this one?
I gotta say, at first I was all yeah, I'd cop this for sure just for the look of it. It's hard to drop just because it's so good. I mean, there's so many elements to that, and it just pops, doesn't it? It's when you look at it, it's like a piece of art on a minifigure. And I've never seen this actually until you showed it to me with this copper drop section. But the AV figures, they obviously knocked it out with this design. It must have taken forever to get it like this, but yeah, the colors and everything. If you guys haven't seen it here on the podcast, go take a look at the Instagram page. That I'm sure you're going to post this at the end. I'm guessing, right?
Yep.
They
Bricks
got to take a
underscore
look at
and
this,
underscore
and then
banter.
yeah, and definitely go over to AV Figs and check. Now, question I have is: does AV Figs, did they print this, or is this like
I
decals?
believe this is printed. Yeah,
Nice.
as far as I'm aware, they kind of go in between both. But looking at this kind
Right.
of arms, I don't know, with the way the lighting's hitting, it looks like it's printed to me.
I think so. Well, either way, it's definitely a cop. Now,
Incredible.
if it's
Yeah.
decals,
Less so.
probably not, because yeah, my success rate with the decals is not so good. So
Just gonna have to find somebody to decal it for you.
I was gonna say I might have to pay one of you guys, the pros out there that might have like time to do that. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. But yeah,
It's
no, I'm in
impressive.
love with just the way the front of the helmet is. It captures it all perfectly.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of when I see these kind of designs that are out there that you'd never expect, right? Like to see a clone trooper Day of the Dead figure. Who'd have thought of that? And it's so brilliantly done. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of people playing with that the form of the troopers, like namely Hoodie Studios, Griff,
oh yeah.
Painter, just doing incredible. It's just art on a minifig. It's great.
There's so much stuff out there too that I every so often on Instagram I'll see on my search, I'll go like, what the heck? Where did that come from? This is one of those that'd be like, dang, where did this come from?
Right, just from left field, nothing you could expect.
Exactly. But yeah, definite cop for me. So yeah, that was an easy round, 3 cops in a row.
Yeah, it's like that sometimes.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has really been a pleasure, Adam. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience?
Just keep playing, keep trying new things, keep pushing boundaries, keep creating, and keep it positive out there, like all the other guests have been saying. Yeah, that's one thing about the community that's awesome and keeps attracting us AFOLs into it. And as long as we keep it that way, keep it fun, it's all good.
Yeah, always forward.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
And it's been good chatting with you too, man.
Yep. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well. What an episode. Thank you all again so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, share it with a friend or feel free to repost the wrap-up on Instagram to your story and spread the word. It really helps out a lot. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our patrons and other supporters. We have Justin, Francisco, J-Bricks, Dashbricks, PK Custom Lego, Milo, Jay, Mini Bigs, Thomas, Mango Rided Mongo, Bluesy7, Max, and Bricks Cinema. I could not do this without you all, so the support seriously means a lot. That's all for this week, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good one.